stories? Why, when, and how? Why? Memorable. People remember stories. They remember stories much more than they remember statistics or logical arguments or steps. They remember stories because it's like you said, our brains are hardwired to remember stories. Easy to follow. If you have a presentation that's quite long, with lots of, I don't know, heavy stuff or heavy theory, then think about putting a story in the middle so that people can relax and just follow a story very easily, to take a break from the hard data. They're personal. As I said, people go to presentations to see a person, a human being, give, a presentation, not to read a paper. Okay, what about when? Beginnings, brilliant places to tell stories. Because if you start with a story, because they're so easy to follow and they're personable, people immediately start listening to you. Okay? So telling a story at the beginning is a really good place. Middle is good, as I said, if you want to give people a break from heavy theory. Beginning and end. You tell the beginning of the story at the beginning, you give your presentation, and at the end you finish the story, and people go, like I said, it's a full circle. So, for example, Nuria's story was the problem that this woman had. She didn't take her medicine, the alarm on the phone didn't work. Then, her presentation was the solution. Okay? So it sets the scene, it sets the context. It's a really good way in presentations. How to tell a great story. First of all, let me tell you that people who tell great stories in bars, or your friends who tell great stories, don't necessarily make great storytellers for presentations. It's a different type of storytelling. People who tell great stories in bars often rely a lot on interaction from people. When you tell a story in a presentation, nobody is interacting with you in the story. You're just telling it from beginning to end. So it's a different type of storytelling. 3 key elements in a story. First, you have a hero. Skywalker. I chose this because you're all researchers, tech nerds. Then you have the antagonist, and then you have a problem, which is when the hero and the antagonist come together. Hero needs to have certain characteristics. He needs to have a personality. Having Telefonica as the hero doesn't work as an organization. But if you give Telefonica a personality, like it's courageous, it's a little bit disorganized, and it's very mature, okay, now we have a personality. But if it's just an organization, a piece of technology can't be a hero unless it has a personality. Easy to identify with. A hero, for example, really muscle guy, really good looking, loads of success with women. I don't identify with this guy because, I mean, it's like, he doesn't have any weaknesses, I'm not like that. That's not the type of hero. Luke Skywalker is a hero. Young adolescent, living with his stepmother and stepfather and bored out of his mind on a shitty planet where there's nothing to do. I empathize with that. I grew up in a village of 300 people. The hero must have a problem. Maybe at the beginning he doesn't have a problem, but he needs to encounter the problem very quickly. Okay? So, next, the antagonist, the bad guy. He can be introduced first, not necessarily the hero. It needs to be a strong opponent. If it's not a strong opponent, we're not interested. The hero should just beat him and move on. You need to describe vividly the problem. It might not be a person. For example, in Nuria's story, who was the hero?
Dolores or Jose?
Dolores or Jose. Depends. Let's say it's Dolores. Can you identify with her? Old woman, forgetting to take her pills. You're a young guy, we're older, I don't know. You can identify with her, okay? So she's a hero.
Yeah, I can relate better with Jose, but still, yeah.
Does she have a problem? Yes. Okay, the antagonist. Who or what was the antagonist? High blood pressure? adherence to taking the prescription drugs. That's the problem. So that's not a person. Is it a strong problem, a big problem? Yes. Is it described vividly? Yes. Might not be a person. Okay? So here we've got a hero and an antagonist. And then, as you say, we have the problems. A good story has multiple problems. However, it has a major problem, one problem. But it should also have minor problems. The major problem is related to your core argument, which is adherence to drugs. Movie pill can help old people adhere to drugs. And the major problem is adherence to drugs. But the minor problems are not related to your core argument. They're just little things to make the story interesting. Jose bought her a mobile phone and it didn't really work very well. These are minor problems, but it keeps the story interesting. Okay? So it creates tension. Another difference about stories in presentations and storytelling in a bar or movies is, in a presentation, you need to interpret the story for the audience. You need to say, the meaning, the message of my story is this. I told you a story this morning about what? I told you a story in the first module this morning.
About the company, factory.
The factory manager. I told you the story, I had to go and help him. He wanted to speak about loads of things. At the end of the day, I found out that they were going to close the company. The message of my story was...
You didn't have enough information up front. That was the message of yours.
Or he thought his message was clear, and I didn't get it. Because he didn't say it clearly. You need to say your message clear and obvious. So I told you a story and then I gave you the interpretation. When you tell your stories, you need to interpret it for the audience. So some tips. Don't give your story 100% happy ending. If Nuria said at the end of her story, and Dolores took movie pill and now she's lived to be 120 and she's dancing in a disco. No, it's not 100% happy ending, but it's a good ending. Concrete details. Dolores lives in Malaga. She put the pill on the kitchen table. Her son Jose bought her a mobile phone. Little details, the name of the son, where she put the pills. It makes the story visual first so we can follow. Specific time and context. Last year, Dolores had a problem in Malaga. Include strong emotions. If there are no strong emotions in your story, it's not an important story. Dolores was suffering. She wasn't taking her medicine on time. Her health was suffering. The rule of 3 is to repeat things 3 times. In Nuria's story, her son tried, there was 3 attempted solutions to the problem. One was to leave the tablets on the kitchen table. The second was to set an alarm on the phone. And then the third, movie pill, worked. Okay? So try to get the rule of 3 in. Don't use pictures when you tell your story. Okay? If you've got a story to tell, black the screen, let me tell you a story. If you use pictures, it takes away from people's imagination, doesn't work so much, and they don't get involved in your story. They're like looking at the pictures and letting their imagination go into the pictures. The imagination should be coming from your words. Okay? So don't use pictures for your stories.
But if you have the real picture of the real Dolores, it would be stimulating too.
No, it's more stimulating to say Dolores is an old woman living in Malaga. She loves vin del plat. Oh no, she's someone that's Catalan. So, no, she loves a TV program. You know, baila con mi, ¿cómo se llama? She loves The Sopranos. Dolores lives in Malaga, she loves The Sopranos. I can make a picture of Dolores now in my head. And that's better than showing a picture of her. And it's really important, the hook. The hook is this magical thing which is the very beginning of your presentation, which is a combination of the hero, where they are and what their problem is, that makes us go into your story right at the beginning. Star Wars has a brilliant hook. In the first 2 minutes, we want the story, because we see Luke Skywalker, he's pissed off, he's in the middle of nowhere, and you go, I'm like that. And then you follow his story. Okay? So the hook is the very, very beginning, all of the elements of context, time, hero, and problem. Okay. Remember, for stories, use them really, really, I suggest, and definitely for speaking to business people or general public, use stories. I think they're just as effective for researchers, but don't make them so simplistic that the researchers are, it'll be a different story for researchers than it will be for general public. Give specific details and emotions, make it surprising, be clear what the message is.